Yeah. You visited? Nobi?
Yep, yeah, and it's going to be kind of interesting because
Okay.
she looked at some of that needs to do a lot of work. She's like, yeah, I just do like a project, so she's a lot of work. So, yeah, that's going to be good. We'll fix up another house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except it's the house beside the one that's falling down. That'll just I think there'll be some calls to the
Yeah, really?
I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Please.
Please. This is the first meeting of the Charter Review Committee on Thursday, October the 3rd, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. at the City Hall building at 915 South Toverville Road, Bisbee, Arizona. And we will be starting the meetings at 5:30. And the first thing that I would like to do is to go around the table and to have you introduce yourselves and which ward you're from or your position here. There's one person that's a freeholder, one person that is representing the last Charter Review Committee as required by the Charter. So other than that, if you'd start, and if you don't mind, Sandra, can we start with you?
Sure. I'm Sandy Hummingbird, and I'm from Ward 3. I'm Danielle Bouchevet from Ward 1.
Fred Miller, Ward 2.
Tom Winter, original freeholder.
Boyd Nickel, Ward 1.
Tony Crowley, Ward
I'm Shawnee, Ward 1. That's Sean Higgs on here.
Tom Holtz, Ward 1.
Winetta Hill, Ward 3.
Sylvia Annabelle, former committee member.
Yes, thank you. And we have two people that will not be here tonight because of one's a medical commitment and the other one they're on vacation, which was a prior commitment. But they will be joining us in, I'm sure, the next meeting. It is important, if possible, to make these meetings. We do have to have a quorum to conduct any business. And so the charter review process is, I just want to go through a couple things real fast because we have, we're really lucky to have Mr. Ken Strobeck, who is the executive director of the Arizona Leagues of Cities and Towns. I called and asked for assistance from them, and the boss himself came down. So we're very, very, I'm honored that that's happening, and certainly appreciate that. And Ken's going to be talking to us about the importance of charter, what a charter is, because every city is not a charter. We have 91 cities in Arizona, and all of them are not charter cities. And so Ken will talk to you about what charters do and why we want charters and why we are a charter city and what that means. So in going through this process, first of all, in a little while we'll be electing a chair, a assistant chair, and a secretary. These are very important functions. The chair will be running the meeting. I will not be running the meeting. I'm running the meeting until we get to that point. And the chair will be running the meeting. If they're not available, the assistant chair will be doing that. The secretary will be taking notes. Those notes will then be provided and they'll be transcribed. As well, this meeting is being recorded, as I indicated. It's being recorded by video and sound. And so this is available and will be available probably tomorrow. I'm sorry, tomorrow's Friday. On Monday, it will be on the city website. So you can go back and take a look at that if that's necessary. But I did want you to know that because many people will be going to that to see just what the committee's doing. So the idea of this committee is to go through the charter. The charter is, as Ken's going to discuss, basically, it's our city's constitution. It's what we operate under. As mayor, I use the charter literally every day. I refer to the charter. It's kind of like the charter of the United States government. Some of it is maybe a little unwieldy. Some of the wording is perhaps a little archaic because it was developed Tom was on the very first charter review, the charter committee that actually put this together. And things have changed, just like we talked about a few minutes ago. We didn't have to worry about people on the council texting people in the audience, or even each other during a meeting, which could violate the open meeting law under some circumstances. So there's things that need to be brought up to date, and so we're hoping that we can do that. My suggestion is, as we're going to do this, we take and bite off pieces of this. So that's why I had suggested that you review sections 1 and 2, and I have gone through sections 1 through 4, and I've just provided some ideas that have come up as mayor, that have come up to me, but citizens have also brought some of these items up to look at. And as we get to those, if we get to those tonight, then I can discuss with you, should you wish, the reasons that they're on here. So if I might pass that around. Therefore, Ms. Coleman, our city manager, one of the, as you see on here, is removal of city manager. when we, believe me, I feel that I'm the pro on removing city managers. So because of that, I think that there's perhaps when we get there, we'll discuss about some rewrites on making it not quite so.
Cumbersome.
That's one way to put it. Yes. So I would encourage you, obviously, while I'm running it, to ask any questions you want, and we'll go from there. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Ken, so that this poor guy is going to drive home back to Phoenix tonight, so that he can get back on the road and before the coyotes come out and deer come out. So Ken, thank you again so much for being here.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll give you that in case you need that.
Sure. Should get the recording. Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you to each of you for coming out tonight. I know that this is a time commitment, and it's very important, as the Mayor said, that this job gets done well, and it's always a pleasure to come down to Bisbee. I always enjoy the community, and I've been here many times, and so thank you for the invitation to come back and to talk to you. And as the Mayor said, I'm just going to kind of talk from the 30,000-foot level about charters and about municipal self-government in a very high level. But if you have any specific questions, feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to answer. Just let me start off by saying that we have 2 publications that the League has written that are available on our website, which is azleague.org. And this is one, Exploring Charter Government for Your City, that I'm going to borrow heavily from this in what I speak to you about tonight. And the other one is one that's called Charter Provisions in Arizona Cities. And this one is interesting because it's kind of a side-by-side chart of what various charters in different cities contain. Because there's no one-size-fits-all for city charters. You can put things in there that nobody else has and vice versa. Or you can put things in there that everybody has. So that's the beauty of a charter, is it really is customized for your city. So let's talk about charters in general. The Arizona State Constitution in Article 13 grants specific authority for cities with a population of more than 3,500 to adopt a city charter. And that was in the original 1912 Arizona Constitution. This provision recognizes the authority of locally elected decision makers to make local decisions and the ability of local government closest to the citizens to respond to specific needs in your community. So tonight, that's what I'm going to talk about: the history of charter government for cities, the impact of the courts on charter powers, and that's something that we're still exploring regularly. The types of options available with charter government, and the step-by-step process. I won't get into that too much about it involved in adopting a charter, because you've already adopted the charter, but the charter review is what you're charged with. So this obviously dates back in Arizona prior to statehood, believe it or not. The concept then, as now, encompasses a basic principle of American federalism, that is local self-determination. Through adoption of a charter, a local community can choose the specific structure of its representative government and the manner in which that government will respond to citizen needs. And those two things are items that the courts have generally upheld in cities as city charters, is the form of government and the way you deliver local services or how you conduct local business. The other interesting thing about when I mentioned pre-statehood, there is a city in Arizona that has a charter that was issued by the Arizona Territorial Government. That's the city of Tombstone has a charter, a city charter, but it was issued by the Territory of Arizona. And when the Territory of Arizona went away, there's been some discussion about, well, how do we change that? There's no provision at all for ever getting rid of that. And I think they kind of enjoy having their own territorial charter. As the mayor said, a valid comparison can be made between a city charter and a constitution. Cities adopting charters are actually adopting a constitution, so you don't get into the minutia of what ordinances or your city code would be, but the Constitution is the general framework. And in fact, the Arizona Constitution refers to charters as the organic law of the city. So it's sort of like that's what's in the bones of the city. That's what the charter is. There are advantages to having a charter government. First and foremost, the charter strengthens the ability of the city to deal with local concerns without continually having to check state statutes in some of those areas or with state agencies. And it allows the city to adopt, as I said, the structure of government that you want locally. There are 19 charter cities in Arizona, not counting Tombstone, but 19 under the Arizona Constitution. Of the 91 incorporated cities and towns, and under the Arizona Constitution, a community incorporated as a town cannot adopt a charter. You have to be organized as a city under the Constitution. And so it's interesting that the town of Gilbert, they're now calling themselves the biggest town in America because they have a population of about 250,000, but they're still incorporated as a town. So they cannot adopt a charter because they're still incorporated as a town. In general, there are two types of charter authority. There's legislative charter authority, which first emerged in Iowa in 1858 when the Iowa legislature passed a law giving municipalities the power to adopt a charter. And then there's constitutional charter authority, which came about in Missouri in 1855 when voters there adopted a constitutional amendment that said that cities of a certain size could adopt a charter. And that's the form that we have in Arizona is constitutional because the original Constitution says that the cities over 3,500 can adopt the charter, and that the legislature is limited to passing only general laws. So the legislature can never pass a state ordinance, state statute that refers to a city by name because that would be a special law. So they only refer to cities as cities with a population of over so much, or cities located in this area that have this kind of characteristic. So they have to refer to any city in general terms so that it becomes a general law, not a special law. So that's one protection that we actually have from the state legislature is even if they're angry at you over plastic bag ordinances or something, they can pass general laws, but they still can't pass a specific law that singles out or identifies one particular incorporated city. Before we had the Arizona Constitution, if a community wanted to be incorporated, they had to go to the legislature or the territorial legislature and ask for that. So that's where the original concept of incorporating cities came from. And then in 1866, Congress passed what's called the Harrison Act, which prohibited territorial legislatures from making special enactments relating to cities. And after that, they could, again, only be incorporated under general law. So when the Arizona Constitution was written in 1912, it borrowed that provision from Oklahoma and their state constitution, which had a paraphrased Harrison Act. And then that became part of our Constitution, and that resulted in constitutional charter authority for cities in Arizona. So what do charters do? Well, they provide some clarity about the components of local government. Most charters, again, deal with organizational structure. That can mean the number of members on the city council, whether they're wards or districts, what your council salaries are, if you have any, term limits for the process for replacing vacancies. All of those fall under the structural or organizational provisions of a city charter. City administration is often covered regarding matters such as employees who happen to report directly to the council. Generally very few of those, but you can have those identified in a charter. Requirements for removal, as the mayor said, processes for adoption of ordinances and so forth. They can also include matters of finance, such as tax authorization processes, contract requirements, investment requirements. And there can be special provisions in a charter so long as they are strictly of local concern and deal with local matters and are not in conflict with the state constitution or state statutes. So in Bisbee, you have some unusual requirements. You have the requirement that all council meetings and work sessions must be videotaped and broadcast. I don't know that anybody else actually has that in their city charter. Plus you have provisions regarding land use and architectural review and establishment of a judicial selection committee for appointment of city magistrates. So those are all things that would be only applicable to the city of Bisbee and therefore should be in your city charter. City charters can be both liberating and restricting for an elected city council. They establish clear policy lines in certain areas and may redirect authority away from the council to the people. City charters do not insulate you from having to follow state law, as some people believe, and we certainly know that firsthand with your Senate Bill 1487 and the prohibition on banning one-time use plastic bags. And for more than 100 years since statehood, we've had this state of tension between local and state government over exactly where to draw the line on city authority. But the charter is a very helpful place to start, and it actually has to be approved by the governor of the state. So there is a cooperative relationship at some point regarding the city charter. Now, in the 1800s, the most prominent relationship between state and local government was exemplified by something called Dillon's Rule, and that was the result of a Supreme Court opinion, again in Iowa, in 1868. And it said, in part, municipal corporations, that is cities, owe their origin to and derive their powers and rights wholly from the legislature. It breathes into them the breath of life, without which they cannot exist. As it creates, so it may destroy. If it may destroy, it may abridge and control. So that's where we get the concept of Dillon's Rule states, where all authority for all government is held at the state legislature. And the legislature tells cities, counties, everybody what they can and can't do. It's only at the state legislative level. That's where local stops. But later opinions from Michigan and eventually newer legislation in Iowa established the principle that cities should have what we like to call home rule, which means control over matters that are of local concern without interference from the state government. And Arizona, being the last of the lower 48 states to join the Union, had the benefit of more than 130 years of history to see how other states had adopted their issue of local control, and so our original Constitution did have a provision for city charters. So the courts. A recurring question about charter authority always comes down to the actual powers it gives the city and the powers that can be preempted by the power of the state. Now, this is an area that the courts are in the position to make decisions about. And there is a Supreme Court in Arizona from the 1950s that is often cited, particularly by the Office of the Attorney General, that says any authority that cities have in Arizona is granted specifically by the legislature. And again, that sounds awfully lot like a Dillon's Rule state, but our Constitution says no, we have charter authority. So which one is right? Well, it's been a tug of war ever since 1912 when the Constitution was adopted, because again, courts have the ability to make that interpretation. So we do have this as a court opinion in Arizona that says we only have authority that's granted by the legislature. But in 2012, there was a ruling, again, regarding the city of Tucson and their elections process, where they have nominations by ward and then a citywide election for mayor. And so that was overturned by the Arizona legislature. They said you can't do that anymore, and Tucson and the league joined and took this case up to the Arizona Supreme Court. And that opinion in 2012, there was a section in that reads, quote, 19th century case law and legal commentary generally viewed cities and towns as entirely subordinate and dependent on the state legislature for any governmental authority. The framers of Arizona's Constitution, however, rejected that view, valuing local autonomy. So that was the most recent opinion from the Arizona Supreme Court, that we at least had a glimmer of hope that no, we do get to take control over those matters that are local and can't be preempted by the state. So in 2016, in State versus City of Tucson, again, another special action was filed that about investigating their firearms ordinance, and this was under the Senate Bill 1487 process. And the Attorney General investigated that and found that the destruction of firearms may be in violation of state law, so they pursued Senate Bill 1487. And I don't know if any of you were at that Supreme Court hearing up in Phoenix or not, but it was very interesting because very little of it had to do with the matter at hand, which was city authority. It was all talking about firearms. And it was really, I think the court in many ways missed the boat on what the issue was. But the court found that there was a conflict between Tucson's city code requirement for destruction of seized firearms and state law that prohibited them. And it said that since there was a conflict and it was a matter of statewide interest and not purely local concern, that the state law displaced the city's charter authority when it came to what they called property. And that was really what it boiled down to, was the definition of property. And the city was asserting that, hey, this is property that we have seized, and therefore it's our property and we can dispose of it if we want. And the court said, no, what that reference is only to real property. So you can't pick up real property and destroy it, so that you can, the provision is only applicable to real property, so therefore your firearms ordinance violates state law. So as with this and other similar cases, the court has not followed a consistent pattern in its decisions, and apparently there's no way to anticipate what courts will do in the future regarding charter authority. So kind of uncharted territory. So again, the advantages of adopting a charter are many, but perhaps the single most important one is that it really lets everyone know exactly what the structure of the city is going to be, and the city can really help determine its own unique characteristics within limits in the charter. So in the area of personnel, state law permits charter cities to authorize agreements on setting wages and salaries. The charters of Mesa and Chandler specifically prohibit city employees from entering into collective bargaining contracts. And on the other hand, City of Tucson's charter provides for advisory arbitration of wage disputes. So you can have charters that really go from one end of the spectrum to the other. Another advantage is the charter as it relates to the municipal court system. Under state law, the city council appoints the city magistrate, and that appointment power is received with mixed emotion by some critics, which claim that a court cannot render justice if they're appointed by the council, that they will serve the council. So a city can avoid or at least blunt that criticism by providing in the charter for a commission to make recommendations, as you do here in Bisbee. And Yuma's charter, for example, also has another way of handling this issue, and they say that municipal judges are to be elected rather than appointed by either the council or a municipal judge commission. Charters can limit authority. For example, a charter in Tucson limits the property tax rate to $1.75 per $100 of assessed valuation. Tucson also has a section of their charter that exempts tax on food for home consumption, and a number of charters require voter approval to increase the local sales tax. Fears of development of a city resource in Phoenix prompted citizens there to pass an initiative amending their charter to require voter approval for any sale or trade of city-owned preserve land. The citizens of Tucson, again, by amendment, amended their charter, or by initiative, amended their charter to require voter approval for the placement of freeways, parkways, controlled access highways, and grade-separated interchanges. Charters can also include different procedural requirements. For example, a city charter may require a zoning ordinance to have 2/3 vote on the council for passage. Another charter provision requires an ordinance to be posted 96 hours before any action on the ordinance. So, just a few examples of various charter provisions. So most charter cities do periodically establish a charter review committee, as you're doing here, and you have a requirement to do so. And many times the committee will not make any changes once they've reviewed the charter. Sometimes they do make changes, and of course, as you all know, any changes that you make then go to the council, who then refers them to the city citizens for a vote. But again, the charter is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. Some people seem to think that, especially in non-charter cities. They just think, oh, all we have to do is pass a charter, and then we don't have to follow state law. That is not the case. So,
Well, that's.
pardon me? Yeah. So, any questions or comments on what I had to say? Yes.
If you don't have a charter, a city's form of government and things are set by statute or the Arizona Constitution?
No, that's a good question. We refer to those as general law cities. And so in those cases, if there's a question about what to do at the local level, you have to go to state statute to find a reference to that. I mean, they can pass local ordinances and have the local city code, but when it comes to matters that the state dictates, you don't have any ability to say, well, no, we have that in our charter, so this is a matter of local concern. But yeah, there's charter cities and general law cities. Thanks for reminding me about that.
One other question. These, I don't remember the exact phrase, but it's something like, under the charter, we have the power we can preempt the state, trump the state in matters that are of local concern or something like that. Is that what it's?
It's kind of the other way around. There are many bills that now show up in the state legislature, and their council advises them to include this phrase that says, we find whatever X issue to be a matter of statewide concern. And by doing that, then they're trying to preempt the field and take that authority away from you. That's where the courts have jumped in and said, well, in some cases it is, in some cases it isn't. In the case of Tucson's elections, they had a provision in that state statute that said, we find Tucson's elections to be a matter of statewide concern. And the court said, no, it's not. It's only a matter of concern in Tucson. It has nothing to do with you.
Is that the way it's breaking down? Things about the form of government are found generally to not be of statewide concern?
Form of government, elections, specific local ordinances, again, regarding such things as local taxes, that kind of stuff. And the number of members of the council and term limits, those kinds of things. Those are, again, purely local.
But we found out that plastic bags are a statewide issue.
Concern.
I have a question. It seems to me you said that the minimum number of people in the city should be 3,500. What if a city loses population and goes below that? What happens then? And
Well,
has there ever been a case?
There has not been a case of that, and I believe that the example or the precedent would be that once they have crossed that threshold, they can become a charter city, and then even if there are fluctuations in population that go down below that, it doesn't void the charter. It would still be a charter city. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask the exact same
Oh, is that
question.
right? Okay.
Anybody else?
Who enforces the city charter?
The city charter is self-enforcing, self-executing, but it's the city attorney or the county attorney that would be responsible for enforcing that. Ultimately, the attorney general, I suppose, if an issue got that far, that it had to be determined. But again, because it's a local document, the enforcement is at the local level.
In any city charter, if a committee such as this makes changes, it has to go to the voters of any kind of changes at all.
Yes, it
Yes.
does, because it's like the Constitution. You're making a constitutional amendment, and ordinances can be changed by the council, and sometimes there are provisions about what the requirement for a vote is on the council, whether it's a majority or supermajority. But any change to the charter has to then go to the people to be approved.
Is that a special election?
No. Well, I was going to say, we're looking at, Sandra, we're looking at 2020. We're looking at November. We're looking
So it's
at
the
a year
next
from now.
election.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and there are now four, I believe, four allowable election dates for cities now.
Right.
You mentioned a few things that you found unusual in Bisbee's charter. How about regarding the Article 1 and Article 2 about form of government, the council, mayor, form of government? Is there anything that you see unusual or special that we're doing in these areas?
Not really. There are different cities that have different sized councils, and as I mentioned, some of them have term limits in their charters. But not the council manager form is very prominent throughout Arizona. That's something that virtually all the cities and towns have in common. And
Is
so,
the duties of the mayor under our charter, are they similar to?
I didn't go back and review that specifically, but in general, in many of the charters that I've looked at, the duties of the mayor, the duties of the council, responsibilities, et cetera, are very, very similar.
There are questions that we have that we can't seem to get an answer or conflicting answers. Can we call on the lead for
Sure.
assistance?
Sure. What we can do is we can give you general advice. We are not your lawyer, so we can't give you specific advice, but we can tell you if you have a question just like this, for example, how many do other cities have a structure similar to this? We can tell you those kinds of things. So yeah.
Right, and we would rely on our city attorney too for assistance.
Yeah.
You betcha.
Right.
Anything else?
I have one more.
Yes, ma'am.
All the way through the charter, it says the city shall, the city may. What is the city? I mean, is that the council
Right.
only?
Yeah, you'll see somewhere that it says that all power is vested in the council,
Okay.
and the way that the council does business is by a majority vote. That's the only way you can do anything in a city. You can't have the mayor just declare things, you can't have any council member just declare things. It has to be done, business of the city has to be done by a majority vote of the council.
Okay.
Anything else?
Good.
Ken, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, and good luck to you all, and thanks for taking this on.
Yeah, we're off on an adventure here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Obviously, you're welcome to stay,
Thank
but
you.
I know that you want to get on the road.
I think I probably
So
will.
thanks. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you.
And following up, our thank you. And following up, our charter presently indicates that this is rewritten every 5 years. So I just wanted to let you know that as mayor, it's my job to quote appoint a charter review committee, and the way that is done is have the council people, each ward has 2 council people, and have each council person provide 2 names. And we're behind the curve on this because several council people have refused to provide those names. And so that's why the 5 years we're past that. We need to move on this. So that's I was just bringing that up because you'll see we're past the 5. Last charter review I was on with Sylvia and obviously a number of people, we came forward with a large number of changes. And I'm just letting you know. And the council basically turned down almost all of them. The first step is for us to provide this information. Then we'll take it to council. We will have hearings on it. And then whatever ones they pass, which with your hard work hopefully is the majority or all, then it does go to the voter, and it will go to the voter then a year from now, a little over a year from now. What I would hope we can do is obviously with doing it correctly, but moving on this and getting this done as soon as possible, because it does have to go to council, it has to go through this process, it has to be printed way up ahead of time, and it's a long process in getting something to the voter.
So you're saying
So-
2021? He said a year from now, 2021? Are we looking at
2019, 2020.
2020.
Yes, ma'am, the election of 2020, the second Tuesday in November.
And the council can pick and choose which ones.
Yes, ma'am. I'll just give you a quick example. Ken brought it up a couple of times. I pushed personally, as a member of the committee, pushed term limits. And term limits were voted on by the committee. And that's the first thing the council threw out. So that's just so that's just letting you know that there are some things. You will also note that it says January 1988 on this. That was never changed. This document is a November 2014 document. Okay? So that it was voted on in November 14. So I want, yes, sir.
You were just talking about the process for amending the charter,
Uh-huh.
and I see that's addressed in the charter. It's section 17.01 and refers to the method provided by the Constitution or laws of the state. Do you happen to know where that is? The procedures for amending the Constitution according to the charter. According to our charter, you look to the state constitution or the laws of the state for like taking it to the council. And do you know where that is?
Isn't it in the Arizona revised statutes under election law?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Statutory?
Yeah, it is statutory, and I believe, thank you, Tom. I believe that, I don't remember the title number right now, but yeah.
It's under elections, so
Yes.
when you go to the Arizona revised statutes on the internet, just scroll down to see elections and look through the,
Yeah,
whatever section 17 or 19 or whatever it is.
right. Tonight, you're also going to decide on your meeting dates and things like that. I will make one suggestion, it's just a thought, but if you run your meetings more than 2 hours, they typically become non-productive. So it's just a thought.
I didn't see anybody frown.
No, I'm just, like I said, I don't want to send you mixed messages. I'm hoping you jump right in here and we get this thing and we can get it done in a set of meetings. But if you do marathon meetings, you're going to find that the next meeting you're going to come back and make a change on something you did the meeting before because you were tired.
Will the city attorney attend these meetings?
Not necessarily. The meetings are us. The city manager is here as a staff liaison with the city clerk. And the city clerk isn't here today, so our deputy clerk, Nina Williams, is taking that position today. If we have any questions, we can get hold of the city attorney, but typically he would not. In this case, he would not. Sir.
So would it be, if we had legal questions about this and that, we could just kind of write down a list and forward it to the city
Yes, well, that's-
attorney, and then we could get that answer by email or something within a week or something like that? Is
That's
that-
our job.
Okay, so that's the...
You betcha. Well, yeah, we would hope that the secretary notes that in the minutes, and that then that's our job. And so you are all voting members except for Tom and Sylvie. and they're here to help. Tom is here to give you, just like some history, if it comes up, why is this here? Tom may be able to address that. And likewise Sylvia, why, she, you know, well, that came up last year, but we thought, or last time, but we thought, whatever. Okay? So with that, we need to elect a chair?
We're open.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, thanks. I kept looking at this, Fred, but I need to put on glasses. The open meeting law. Was everybody given a copy of the open meeting law? You know, Nina?
No, we just give them the charter.
All right, would you get one out to them, please? The open meeting law is one of the most important things that we can operate under. We have several individuals that are watching every meeting to look for violations of the open meeting law. And the Attorney General is receiving complaints on that, which are almost all unfounded. They're up into, I don't know, 20, into the high 20s this year already, a number of complaints. And they are being unfounded. So the open meeting law is very important. You cannot, a group of you cannot get together and discuss what you want to talk about here. You can't have a meeting before a meeting. Technically, you have a group, there's 12 of you that can vote. So a quorum is 7. So technically, 5 of you could talk. But the idea is don't go there, because if that group of 5 get together and say, hey, come on over, let's have a glass of wine, let's talk about some of this sort of stuff. And then one of those members happened to see somebody on the street from the group that didn't get involved and said, hey, we talked about such and such, that's a violation of the open meeting law. So the idea is don't get together in any types of groups and talk. Likewise, on your emails, you'll be getting emails from myself and perhaps Teresa and certainly Ashley and Nina. Do not reply to all. Be very, very careful in replying. Reply back to myself or whoever sent that email, please, but do not hit reply to all, because that includes that everybody, and that can be construed as an open meeting law violation. The open meeting law, the Attorney General's office has a section for just OML complaints, and they have attorneys hired just for OML complaints. And it's a big deal in the state of Arizona. It's a big enough deal to let you know that you can be fined up to $5,000, and you have to pay it personally. If you guys get together and have an open meeting, and there's an open meeting law violation, you now have to pay. It's a new change in the law. The city will have to pay $5,000, and each one of you that is accused within that group would have to pay $5,000.
So where do you find time to talk about all this stuff?
Here.
Only here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You can, my understanding is you can make an issue known through Nina, and she can send that issue out to the rest of the committee. We just can't respond to each other. If there is a question about something, we can do that, I believe.
Absolutely. If you, as an example, you ask about legal questions. If you had a question and you said, hey, Mayor, would you check with the Attorney Ledbetter? Then we could check, and we could fire off an email back to you all saying, I would check with the attorney, his interpretation is this. That's great. You just couldn't say, I don't agree with that, and let everybody else know that you didn't agree with it. Or, I think that's a great idea. That would be an open meeting law violation also. So, Fred, you are correct that, but Nina, Ashley would not be able to transmit your opinions, just the things that you need. Make sense? Okay, I know I'm really stressed, but really, believe me,
So it's anything that might indicate how you would vote.
that's right.
So,
That's right. Anything about how you would vote or what your opinion is on an item coming up. Or even to say things like, you know, next meeting, we've got to get term limits on that. I'm tired of us not putting that on there. Okay?
Just even between two of us.
Two of you would be okay. I'm just telling you, two of you would be okay. I'm telling you, technically by law, 5 of you is okay. Because you have, but if there was 5 of you, and you then came into a meeting, 5 of you that had talked, and only 9 of you total are at that meeting, then that you say you now over that particular quorum limit. So it's very, very dangerous to talk to a group of people. 2 of you can talk all you want, because we can't have a meeting with 3 people. Make sense? Sandra, does that make sense to you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sure. All right. With that, let's move on to electing a chair. Do we have any volunteers, first of all, for chair? Chair is actually running the meeting according to parliamentary procedures. The city code tells you how to run a meeting.
Anybody good with parliamentary procedures?
Would you?
I'm not.
You're not?
I'd rather not. Is there anybody who knows the procedures reasonably well?
And one of our reasons for being here is we're going to keep you on the straight and, as much as possible on the straight and narrow. There's a couple of you that are going to be very difficult to do that with. But so don't be afraid of that. We'll help you with the procedures. But we need when you think we need a chair, you need a assistant chair, or co-chair, and we need a secretary. So we need somebody to say, okay, fine, I'll do the chair. I'll take the chair.
Danielle, do you feel comfortable doing that?
No,
No?
I have 0 experience with that.
I'll do it.
Boyd?
I nominate Boyd.
Okay. thank
Those
you,
in
Boyd.
favor of Boyd?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Boyd. We need a assistant chair.
what are the duties of the...
Vice chair. The duties of the vice chair when Boyd's not here, if he's not here, is to run the meeting.
I'll do it. You're going to show up every time, all right?
You start taking notes.
Okay. Is that anybody else?
I know about Shawnee.
All right. Do we have a second? Okay, only seconded then. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, Shani. And a secretary. We need somebody actually to take, not copious, you don't have to put down, Johnny said this, and then Boyd said that, and so forth, but you need to put down the fact that such and such was discussed, and this was decided and voted on by the committee to move forward.
Does that have a certain format?
Nina can help you with any type of format.
Okay, I'd be willing to do that if I
Great.
get guidance on how to format it.
Oh,
Great.
absolutely.
Excellent.
Danielle, was that?
Yeah, I second it.
Boyd seconds that. Excellent. Those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Danielle, congratulations all. Okay, Boyd, you're taking over as of right now, item number 8.
Discussion and selection of times, dates, and length of meetings. Any discussion about day? Let's start with the day. Does Thursday work? Or would there be a better day?
Thursday's fine.
Fine with me? Works for me?
Is it weekly or,
Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm not, that's a good question. I don't, how often we do meet?
That's up to you guys.
I
Within reason, because we have 22, which is going to be part of our discussion, by the way, but we have 22 commissions that meet. And our staff people, we pay them or flex time them or whatever, most of them. And it's an effort. So I'm going to ask you, don't ask to do this once a week. But other than that, that's kind of up to you with as long as the facility's available. Obviously, you couldn't do it on, if we were having a special council meeting or something, but otherwise, sure.
I have a suggestion, or just a loose framework, maybe if we had a regular monthly meeting, but we had a provision for like a posted additional meeting, because if we find out that, oh, we're not going through this nearly as quickly as we thought, we're going to need to have a second, meeting to play catch up or something, like in later months or something.
It sounds very intelligent. Any other discussion on it?
Let me see, if we have a monthly,
That's only 2 more meetings.
When are we obligated to finish this?
You're not up when it's finished.
When would it be helpful to have this finished?
Approved by the council in time for the ballot.
Right. And that's April, I
Okay.
think.
We will clarify that for you at your next meeting.
You have
6 months.
I think August is the last month to get something on the general ballot, I think.
Yeah, but it's got to go to the council a couple
It's gotta go
times
to council
before that.
Before that.
So I'm going to say you've got, if you need it, 6 months. I would like you to, let's say, I would really appreciate it if you could shoot for 6 months.
How often do we meet?
We met once a month.
And how many, 6 times?
6 to 8.
Yeah, I thought so.
I'm going to say 8.
Yeah.
It's the same, but the last time I was on this, we did met about 6 times, so I remember.
Is every other week too often for most people?
Every other week,
Yeah.
like the first and third
Or-
Thursday or.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, I'd just as soon kind of knock this out myself. But
Everything that's coming up, don't look like you probably need that stuff, or like Sean was talking about, have some type of an amendment of some sort in there where we could, when it comes down to crunch time, to maybe put some more time in. Or if we're having issues at a certain session, schedule another one.
So we got a general feeling for once a month?
Okay, and then amend it,
If we
extra
need-
meetings
if
as
we
needed?
need it,
Okay.
extra meeting this week, okay.
And is it like the first Thursday, like, of the
Now,
month?
I have a real issue with Thursday because we work on weekends and we usually leave on Thursdays to do our weekend work.
How about,
So-
is Wednesday would be better for you?
Oh, yeah.
Anybody else?
So we're-
Wednesday,
Wednesday's fine with me.
Wednesdays are actually better for me.
All right, for me too.
Yeah, because football's on Thursday.
We have to find an open
Now you
Wednesday.
get down to the important stuff.
Yeah, right.
Because I have another meeting coming up in 15 minutes myself. Okay, so,
Wait,
Can we
no,
set the
are there
dates?
conflicts with the city
Hold
and
on.
other meetings?
Exactly, we will have to,
So what I was gonna say is if you pick a Wednesday, you want one Wednesday of the month, what I'll go back and do is go through the calendar, see what Wednesdays are available, and if they're not, give you alternate dates
sounds good.
to meet for that month.
That's good.
okay.
So you will get that Monday or Tuesday.
So do you have to make the
Yes,
motion
ma'am.
of this?
This is October, we're not gonna meet again until November, but if we meet at the first of the month, I'm okay. At the end of the month, November and December, I'm going to be on holiday around the holidays, okay? So you need to know that I wouldn't be here if you chose the end of the month for November.
Yeah, when we have 14 people, it's going to be very, very difficult to choose a day that everybody we know can be there because everybody has a personal life too. So if it's okay, with you, depending on what those days are, We just need to make sure that we have a quorum and encourage everybody to be here if they can. So.
I think because we also have the holidays coming up, the Great American Tradition here, the first of the months, either one of those months, November, December, would probably be better for everyone, I'm sure.
Then the end of the month.
The first Wednesday in the month.
The first
would be-
Wednesday that works with the city.
Yeah.
They'll cut back to us and tell us which Wednesday would work, okay?
Okay.
What is the quorum again?
7.
Seven, okay.
Now, we do need to make a motion on this.
Talk about the length before, so we can just make it all in one motion.
Oh, I think 2 hours is plenty.
Let's go an hour and a half.
Let's go an hour.
Hour and a half.
90-minute meeting?
90 minutes.
90 minutes.
90 minutes.
Can we get anything done? Like, is that enough time? I don't know.
If we go with our
Yep.
evening, we should be able to.
Could we, block out the 2 hours that they're scheduling for whatever, and then just say, hey, we're really trying to, our goal is to do 90 minutes. We want to respect everybody's time, but, in terms of scheduling the staff and having the ability to go over the 2 hours if we needed to, that,
So no longer than 2 hours with the intent of charging, so wrap things up at 90 minutes or so. Is that what you mean?
So 90, so I write down 90 minutes to 120 minutes.
So, Ray, do you want to make the motion?
Yeah, I move that we meet on the first Wednesday of every month at, we discuss the time, say 5:30, for a maximum of 120 minutes, 2 hours. That's it.
And
City.
with the ability to add an extra meeting at the.
With it, yes.
And also,
But,
on approval of the city's
yeah.
availability.
Okay. But first, we'll just say that what we want, and then they'll tell us, no.
I think we might get used to
So
that.
then,
We have a motion on the floor, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
all right.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
A lot of us.
I think Sandy did.
But for the record,
Say Sandy.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next edition,
You need to avoid, I'm sorry, you, for the record, you need to ask for nays.
No.
Anyone
Any
opposed?
nays?
Yeah, anyone opposed?
Yeah, any opposed. So, it just-
Motion passes. Okay, discussion, possible recommendations, and decision regarding Article 1, incorporation form of government, powers of the city and boundaries, Article 2, council.
May I indicate what I gave you here? I plan on going through this as we're progressing, to give you the benefit of where some areas are that are a little cumbersome and areas that I've been asked about. The first one, of course, is that do you want to make the charter gender neutral? It says he all the way through it.
There's a couple, well, the first two, I only went through the first two, that was the assignment, and there was only 2 instances of that.
Yeah, but it's all the way through, but that's,
I think that should just be automatically done.
I agree with you. This was already amended to do that last time I was on this to council before.
I think there was some instances.
It's just
Like,
edit.
but each time they find.
It should just be like a
General
search and
edit.
replace function, right?
Yeah.
And as verbal due to what you want to say. You can't say he, she, and-
Well, why don't we just kind of mention the sections that occurs in the naked unit? Like it occurs 218A and 218 2.18A council members and section 219, no, excuse me, section 220, was her, his. Yeah, paragraph A, 218. Page 8.
So,
City manager's power.
I'm just gonna say, note the sections that it is not general neutral and make it so, we go with section by section.
Can't you just make it throughout the charter, the whole charter?
Sure.
Just to say,
Yeah.
gender neutral.
So, yeah, well,
But he said, you don't say general neutral, you have to come up with the pronoun.
Yeah.
Maybe.
For each one, and you'd have to cite each one, you just can't go through and say it wherever it is.
Yeah.
You gotta go through each section and they'll say, this is what we're changing, because on the ballot, you're gonna have, we're striking this or we're changing this,
So
and
you
you gotta
can't
put
do
that on the
general
ballot.
edits?
Huh?
I said you can't do general edits like
No,
some
no.
definitions.
Not on the ballot.
Not on the ballot.
Okay, so let's start then, let's just go to section 1.01.
yeah.
I just wanted to, is it, would it be possible for us to just have one of us go through the whole thing, circle all of the non-neutral things, make a proposal as to the language change, and come back to the...
Well, we don't, that's not going to work because we have to do it section by section. You'd have
Yeah,
to have the
but
section.
then it would all be done in
Right.
advance, and
Well,
then
we
you
got
could
through
just go quickly through it and just say, this is, this point. is
We're
what
going to do that anyway.
Okay.
All right, fair enough. We got to go through it one at a time. So do we have any problems with section 1.1, name of city? We, the people of the city of Bisbee, within the corporate limits as now established in the matter provided by law, shall continue to be a municipal body, politic, and corporate in perpetuity under the name of the city of Bisbee, Arizona. Section 2.202, the principal government provided by the charter should be known as council manager government. Questions on this? B, pursuant to the provisions and subject only to the limitations imposed by the Arizona State Constitution, laws of the state of Arizona, the laws and Constitution of the United States of America, and this charter, all legislative powers of the city of
Excuse me.
Strike that. The city shall be vested in the elected council, hereafter referred to as the council, which shall enact local legislation, adapt budgets, determine policies, appoint the city manager and other officers deemed necessary and proper for the orderly government and administration of the affairs of the city. There are any changes there?
I have a suggestion, where it says appoint the city manager. I thought, appoint and provide oversight for. I mean, I don't know how that is currently done. If you hire the
It's-
employee.
I think
It's further in there.
It's in the duties of the council.
Right.
It's a little bit later on.
Okay, so, but they're partially outlined what they do, and they say they appoint it. Doesn't it seem like this is also a spot that might go in, or no? I mean,
No, this is general.
I think that-
No, that would probably be under the council's duties.
Duties.
When you get in section 2 on the council members' duties,
well, I looked in section 2, and in terms of the council, I didn't see that mentioned there either.
Is the word elected on the elected council? The elected?
That I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't
Sure.
know
What?
what elective means.
Yeah, but elective instead of elected, I'm not sure if there's.
What does elective mean? I don't know that.
is it a typo?
No, it's not a typo. It's,
Is it a problem with just using a dictionary app for
No.
open meeting law?
No.
Elective, related to or working by means of election.
so it's
So
okay.
it's okay.
Okay.
Continue with Shawnee's point. Yes, do we think that there should be an addition to control the mayor through city council at this point.
The manager.
I mean, it's the manager. Nobody controls the mayor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because I just don't see oversight as responsibilities outlined.
Well, actually, it says that to exercise is official conduct.
Well, actually, and if you want to look at some, Johnny, on page 8, non-interference of council with powers and duties of the city manager, it basically says, stay away. It doesn't.
Right, but well, in terms of instructing the city manager on what to do, they can't step in and say, you need to do this and that.
Let me just indicate what you just said. The charter indicates at this point that only the mayor can instruct the city manager. The council comes to the mayor with requests, and the mayor then instructs the city manager.
Right, what I'm talking about is oversight.
Okay,
that's
not what you just said a minute ago. You said instruct the city manager, and that's why I was wanting you to know what it says right now.
And oversight of the city manager is not council business. So
I mean, you do that all the time whenever, you know,
that's very clear
whenever you do an evaluation of your city manager, you're doing oversight.
So whose job is that?
The mayor and council oversight the city manager every meeting. You know, you're basically looking and seeing what he's doing, what kind of a job he's doing. I don't know how you would write something into the charter for oversight, you know, to say, I don't know what you would say, because anytime you evaluate, you do evaluations, and a lot of times they have their evaluations in executive session. I would like to see them in open session, but everybody has a different idea of how they like to do it.
Do we have a place in here where we talk about the council reviewing the city manager at X point, or how often?
That's a contractual issue.
Oh, okay.
But
and the council approves the contract?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
But I think without actually saying that the council has the responsibility and right to oversight.
It doesn't have the right, though.
For oversight? So
No.
if the council doesn't, if the city manager shows up to meetings drunk, or does something, or starts doing, is suspected of,
Money laundering.
money laundering, okay, yeah, okay, whatever, something like that. But whose job is it to look at that, see the signs, do an investigation, bring it up? I mean, that should be outlined very specifically.
I think it is, Shani, because it is.
Well,
If you look at
removal.
on page 6, permissible purposes for executive session, it has provisions for going into the executive section, and that is for discussion or consideration of employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, demotion, dismissal, salaries, disciplining, or resignation, blah, blah, blah. That's under the duties of the council.
Okay. So
On the
that
executive session.
Any egregious
I
act,
didn't want these
the
guys to
city
work
can ask the
smooth.
council, and
So
members
I
of the
was
council
going
can ask for an
to get
executive
the
session.
state's latest
Of which the subject has to be very defined for the executive
reasons
session, to go into session to talk
provided
about
to these guys
city manager's
to,
conduct or something.
because it's
So
changed.
that's
a
how
little
they
bit,
exercise
But I didn't want them
discipline and
to change it,
oversight is through executive session.
because it has to confirm the state law.
But while I understand that, it just, oversight is, it also involves recognizing that something's going wrong.
That, again, when we get to that, let's not, we're a long way from that.
Okay.
This is just the general discussion of what the council does. C, all powers of the city shall be exercised in the manner prescribed by this charter, or if they not be prescribed, then in such manner as be prescribed by ordinance. Any questions there?
I have a question about that. Would it be proper to include the city code? Is the city code done by ordinance?
Yes.
Yes,
It is.
yes. the city code is a compilation of ordinances.
Of ordinances, so it's not,
Yes,
so
sir.
it wouldn't be included in there.
Yes.
Okay.
Those are the things, okay? Powers of the city, grant of powers. The city shall have all powers granted to municipal corporations and to cities by the Constitution and general laws of this state, together with all of the implied powers necessary to carry into execution all the powers granted. Again, this is boilerplate.
Wait. No, it does not say charter cities in there, I noticed. Of which we are one.
Yeah, it said all powers granted to municipal corporations. We are a municipal corporation.
Okay.
Control of property. The city may acquire property within or without its corporate limits for any city purpose in fee simple of any lesser interest or estate by purchase, gift, device, lease, or condemnation, and may sell, lease, grant, convey, exchange, mortgage, hold, manage, and control such property as its interest may require.
I want to ask, who determines the purpose? We can,
Vote of city council, right?
Yes. City council.
the city council would say this is the purpose,
Yes.
Right.
and therefore you can do it without the vote of the people.
That's, yeah, so when they say, because it says the city, that means the city council.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so the council's going to determine whether the purpose is worthy.
And this comes up all the time. You get a
Yeah.
lease, you get a piece of property, that goes through city council. Condemnation goes through city council, so forth. Okay?
What is your
Well,
concern, Sandy?
you can acquire property for the city purpose. I mean, this is one of those things that we've talked about in the country all over, that taking property away for the city's betterment or whatever, or
No,
buying property.
Yeah, but Sandra, we can't do that in the state of Arizona. This is a huge property rights state. We can't just, it's not like the East Coast where they can condemn property and take it.
Eminent domain, yes.
We are not able to do that, luckily, in this state.
So this is mostly just like referring to buying, is it just real property, or does that include like, buying a backhoe and this is just saying that the city can do, right, basic.
This is real property.
We have sections on purchases and
Yes.
stuff like that.
This is right, this is real property.
Okay.
So the council can determine that we, as a city, need to buy this property,
Sure,
period.
sure.
Yes. Or so.
I don't know that that's ever happened even, but
Well, you don't think we've ever bought property that other people didn't want us to do? Or people in the city might not have wanted us to buy that land?
Not in the 40 years I've been there.
Well, if taken ownership, like of the Ford.
Camp Naco.
Yeah,
Right.
Camp Naco.
Or the city owned.
Right.
that's a different.
Well, but it's taking ownership, that's what
Yeah.
this is
Yeah,
addresses, they're allowed to do
absolutely.
it. So
It's
that's-
acquiring.
that's what it- Yeah, it happens all the
We
time.
have land,
That does happen.
we have land given to us all the time, and sometimes we don't take it. Because there's some Sun Sites property that people have wanted to give us several acres in Sun Sites. And what are we gonna do with a couple acres in Sun Sites? We're not gonna take it, because then we would have the liability.
Well, I was thinking about buying the golf course. So what if the council decides to buy the golf course? And most of the population in town doesn't want us to spend our money that way.
Well, then
Yeah,
you
vote
should
out
fire
the
the
council.
council. I can't imagine,
Okay.
It'd be interesting to see how they came up with the money.
That's what I was just going to say that too. What money are we talking about? We couldn't even buy the Dairy Queen.
Sandra, things like that have to be in the budget.
But if they offered it to you for $1, I mean, I guess I'm making too.
They've already done that, they already did that once, so don't worry about that.
No, the city bought these buildings, I believe it was for $1 from the county. I don't think it was donated completely. I thought it was
Well,
bought.
this is actually on county, we're leasing these from the
Or
county.
leasing, I thought it was,
No, it's a long-term lease at $1.
oh, I thought they sold it to us for $1. Huh.
They should have given it to us after we gave them the armory.
Yeah, city also,
Okay, let's go on here, general municipal powers.
they also give Verho's property. It was the city's.
General municipal powers, except as prohibited by the Constitution of this state or restricted by this charter, the city shall and may exercise all municipal powers, functions, rights, privileges, and immunities of every name and nature, whatever, whatsoever, and may enter into contracts, cooperative and otherwise, with the government of the United States, the state of Arizona, Cochise County, or any other political subdivision of this state or person for the construction, maintenance, and operation of roads, highways, parks, sewers, waterworks, public utilities, and public buildings, including the right to sell sewer effluent, all when deemed in the best interest of the city. Which is, we have done, we sold effluent to Freeport. Okay. Any
And
questions on that?
the council is the one that deems in the best interest of the city.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay, enumeration of powers. The enumeration of particular powers by this charter shall not be deemed to be exclusive. And in addition to the powers enumerated herein or implied hereby or appropriate to the exercise of such powers, God, legal language is so wonderful. It is intended that the city shall have and exercise all powers which under the Constitution or laws of this state it would be competent for this charter specifically to enumerate.
Could you explain that? Yeah.
That's legalese. It's CYA. Any questions on that? Something than what? Okay, let's just say this is boilerplate.
What does it mean? I
Yeah,
don't
does
even know
anybody
what it
have
means.
a natural
okay.
language version of that? Like,
They are not exclusive in addition to the powers enumerated herein. There are other powers that could be implied or prohibit the exercise of these powers. It is intended the city shall have and may exercise all powers which under the Constitution and the law of the state it would be competent for the charter specifically.
This is a catch-22.
Yes.
This is just simply saying that we can't enumerate every power the city has. They just, they've got what they have and what the state gives them and the people give them.
Well explained. Thank you, sir.
In these first sections that you see here in the charter, when the Board of Freeholders got together back in 1987, 14 of us got together, the first thing we did was we had somebody come down from the League of Cities and Towns, talk to us. We sent away for all 15 of the state charters that were all the other cities that had charters, and we all got 15 copies of each charter, each of the 14 of us that were there. So basically, we took those charters home, took the scissors out and cut out what we liked. You know, and a lot of them had the same stuff. All this first section you see, were in every one of them. I don't, there's some kind of legal reason. So we put that in there, you know. Most of the stuff we have in there, we stole from other charters. I mean, a few things we invented, but most of that was taken from other cities. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We looked at what we thought was good and what we thought worked. We put that in. If we didn't like it, we didn't put it.
So that has been what?
maybe that was like a lawyer.
And that's been 32 years. Not very much has changed.
That's what I mean by boilerplate. That's what you get.
That's where all the
Any
issues, if you ask
contract-
them what it means, it's like, I don't know, but everyone has it, so.
Any contract has a bunch of.
There's a reason that everybody has it, so.
Okay, section E then, comprehensive plan. The city of Bisbee shall maintain a comprehensive plan defined as a written document that includes short range, 1 to 2 years, and long range, 3 to 5 years, goals, focuses for city operations, revisited annually. This plan may serve as a guide for departmental priorities, future physical development, land use, regulations, capital improvements, and annual funding allocations. Additionally, the council may be, by ordinance, adopt planned use and developmental regulations, including but not limited to an official map, zoning, subdivision regulations. This just allows the city to
Short-term,
function
long-term
as
goals.
just describer of
The last.
the plan, and you have to have a plan. This is all state law now. You have to have a plan about where you expect your city to be 2 years from now, 5 years from now. The validity of that, I don't know.
Where is it available?
Yeah, this is one of those things that I have a little bit of a pet peeve with, because there have been years, I don't know if in the most recent years, but there have been a lot of years where it wasn't revised, and this has been let go, and I think it's a really important element. And where it says in the first sentence, shall maintain a comprehensive plan, I think there needs to be some enforcement of that. I think it needs to be made a larger priority, because there are too many things that just get lost in carrying on that kind of institutional knowledge and these larger projects and working towards bigger goals. I think is really important for the health of the town.
It's happened the years that I've been mayor. It has happened. It didn't happen for some time before that.
Yeah.
But it has happened, and as I just indicated, the city manager will be doing that again probably in February.
Right. But this document is, it's not specific to certain individuals and their competence. I think that this document, has to have things in place that make sure that anybody who's in that position that does all of the things that are set out in this document.
Well, there's a place in here that
Yeah, you're
has
misunderstanding this whole purpose of this thing right now. Those will be enumerated piece by piece by piece as we go along. This, again, as I said, is the general structure of the situation. The actual description of how things will actually be done, you'll see as we get along. That's really the nuts and bolts of what this is.
And my suggestion is, Shawnee, when you're bringing up these things, mark it down there.
Yeah.
So that down the road, you
That's
can
good.
check and say, okay, that was answered.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
No, I am. I'm just-
Yeah.
That's a very good idea.
Okay. So, and what Sandy said about where is it and how is it presented, is that's something that's also addressed later on, and I just haven't gotten to that? Or
No.
is-
I don't believe it is addressed later on.
Right.
The,
That seems like a real big deal also, to make it very available to the public.
But that's not in this section.
right.
That would not be in the section we're discussing.
The comprehensive plan is too available, isn't it?
Of course, I don't know where.
You're,
Go to city.
don't,
I got, I'm jumping in.
yeah. Your points are well taken, but not to be put into the document. The document says you shall do it. Then it's a separate thing about if you don't, or how to do it, or.
Exactly. Okay, but this is giving the direction of what shall be done.
What do you, I don't know that Johnny's question's been answered, not for me anyway. What exactly are you proposing? Are you saying that this should specify who's responsible at the city and what the sanctions are if they don't do it, the comprehensive plan? Is that what you have in mind?
Yeah, I mean, that's, can't go forward with X, Y, and Z if you, I don't know what the function of that would be, but I don't like seeing these things going forward without a plan. I think there's been a lot of different, contracts being entered into, various different strategic moves that have been made by different governments over time that I've witnessed here that haven't, referenced a plan, and they haven't maintained the plan and shown that they had a long-term vision for the city so that they could make those decisions in an educated way.
Let me try to straighten this out,
Okay.
maybe. The charter tells you what you need to do. City code tells you how to do it and what remedies are present. If we put everything in here and had a remedy for everything this charter tells you to do, it would be even more cumbersome than it is. So what it does say, it does have a section in here. It says if you don't follow the charter, violations of the charter, here's what happens, violations of the charter. But city code talks to you about contracts and the threshold for contracts and those kind of things. Because those charters don't change but every X years. City code is fluid.
Exactly.
So we say in a general way, this is like the spirit of the law, and the code is like the letter of the law.
Exactly.
You say it that way.
You could say that, in some ways that would be.
Would it be beneficial if it referenced somewhere else in the document? Because I see this, what we're going through as an overview of everything, and more specifics as we move through the document. Would it be beneficial for you if it said reference section blah blah for specifics? And then it would not give the impression that we were overlooking everything.
So is there a section on the plan in the charter?
No,
or-
no,
Okay,
that's city code.
okay, so
This says you,
So it's-
remember,
I
this
got
says
you.
you're
So
going
this is
to do
referencing
it.
city code, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So reference city code.
So I have to go research that.
Okay,
What about,
You went to the wrong meeting, Sean.
let's move on then. How about, I have a question. Yes. I don't know anything about these plans, but long range, 3 to 5 years doesn't seem very long to me. Why is it 3 to 5 years? Someone said something about state statute requires this, maybe that's fine. Yes, it is state statute.
I don't remember what the state statute was, it's been so long since I've looked at it.
I don't either. It is a state statute.
3 to 5 years is a standard long,
Yeah.
for a city and for a government organization. 3 to 5 years is a standard long range.
If it's standard, does it make sense?
Well, I have to
For us,
work
it
with it,
does.
I think it does.
I mean,
Because in the 3 to 5 years, there's constant changes in other governments which affect us and affect funding and so forth. And so we can't come up with a 15-year plan that will go through many, many different administrations and funding changes and so forth, because then we would constantly be changing that. But we can come up with 3 to 5 years, which is typically deemed as a long term. 1 to 2 years, we want a short term and a long term. And that's what we've been doing the last couple of years.
I have a question related to that. It's all right. If it was deemed that a healthy population level for this city, in terms of tax base, in terms of, keeping up the large-scale facilities that were designed for a larger population, was, say, 8,000 people, as opposed to the 5,000 something that we have now. That seems like something that would be written out, like how do we achieve that healthy level? It might be something that you would
Think about it, Shani, as the U.S. Constitution. Is there any place in the U.S. Constitution that talks about anything like that?
No, I'm talking about in the plan, which is not in this
Oh, the
document.
plan.
In the plan, but so I'm saying that's something that plan would need to be a much longer term to answer.
Well, I gave you the reasons why it's not.
Are we getting off the subject of the oversight possibilities here?
Okay, I'm just wondering why that is so specifically laid out in this, that is 1 to 2 years and 3 to 5 years. Instead of having that just...
The elected officials, it's when the elections happen. Things change in elections. It's very simple to me.
Yeah, they
It's
do.
standard procedure in most of these, even in corporations, 1 to 2 year short-term plans. Very seldom do you go beyond 5 years in a long-term plan.
Okay.
Unless you're Freeport.
Right.
It's a 50-year plan.
Go to China. Specific plans, all right. Section F, the city may adopt specific plans for areas within the city for the purpose of refining the comprehensive plan. Any questions on that? Nope. Okay, prior approval construction. The city may require planning and zoning commission, design review board, and architectural and site plan review and approval of the development, construction, reconstruction, or conversion of any building or structure prior to its physical construction.
That makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. Can we put language in there that the city in its building projects has to be held at the same standards as the public?
That's in the code.
It's in the codes.
Again, that's a code issue, that's not a
That's correct.
It's not a charter issue.
That's a code issue.
Well, I think there's a lot of room to decide what is a code issue and what is a charter issue. I mean, we have a lot of power to propose things to go into the charter that we don't think should be in the code. Just for future reference, any idea that, well, it's currently in the code, so that's a code issue, maybe, maybe not. We can always think things rise to the level they should be in the charter.
Oh, you can.
I'm not saying this is one of them.
No, you can.
Well, okay, then we'll move on. I don't think we're doing our jobs. Oh, that's in the code.
No, and I'm not trying to indicate that either. But I'm just trying to indicate in some of these things that it's probably more proper in a document that changes rather than a document that's, once it's there, is static for 5 years or however many years you want it to be. That's all.
Well, traditionally, it's telling you that right here. Because it may require the planning and zoning commission, design reviews, and all this.
Yeah, as soon as they say may, then they have discretion. If they say shall, then they don't have discretion.
The code indicates that you will provide this to DRB and to P&Z, and when and how.
But I see his point. He says it may over saying the city will require.
Again, you're missing the point here. This is not a direction of a code system. This is a larger oversight of how the city works. This is not telling the city how to work. That is developed by code.
Sandra,
City Council.
yeah, and let me answer your question because it's valid, your statement, except for the fact that if you said shall, then Ward 3 and Ward 2 don't have DRBs, so it wouldn't be valid, you see? That's why it says
The
may.
design review board is only for Old Bisbee?
Yes, ma'am. And that's specifically why it says may, because different wards or different areas have different requirements. Now, down the road, no doubt Warren will have a DRB because it'll be designated as a historic. But right now it doesn't. And it will be many years before San Jose would be require a DRB.
So the code is maintained and controlled by staff and council?
The what?
The code?
The city code would be passed by a majority of the members of the council.
Okay.
And changes to the code would be the same.
Right. So, I mean, for instance, the reason that I have a beef with this is that I complained about the way the work was being done on City Hall and not being overseen by, the same kind of requirements that, having to have a licensed contractor, having to, have plans laid out, having to go through the, the permitting process,
Yeah,
all
okay.
of that stuff, and then it, that was the cause of it burning down. So I think it's a pretty big issue when there were city employees at high levels that were, they like to have that flexibility to not have to be held to the same standards as the public, and we all suffered from it. So that's why I'm saying that this may rise to that level of saying that the city building projects have to be
That's
held
up to the committee.
Yeah.
That's not up to me.
So that's why I'm bringing it up.
It's up to the committee and then it's up to the council.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying.
So you're saying in addition to this, there should be an addition to this provision that says basically any requirements that are adopted by the city in this area shall apply to the city. The city is not exempt from
The
these
city is
policies.
exempt, though, and
The city is exempt?
the city is exempt in some areas having to do with codes and so forth, but that's not what you.
But if it was in the charter that said that they weren't, then they wouldn't be, right? I mean, this is where we address.
I would have to look at state law.
We
You know, I think we
we
should
could get to a
probably-
legal opinion on that.
Okay, can we,
I was gonna say, I think maybe we might wanna mark this like we did with the comprehensive plans, that if our questions aren't answered later in the charter, come back to this.
Sounds good, thank you.
okay.
You know, Shawnee, that's something you could probably put in the charter, add to, make the city follow everybody else's laws and.
I mean, maybe not on everything, but I think on the building.
But on building codes and
Building
stuff
code,
like
yeah.
that, it's something that you could write up, and maybe you could slip in here.
We'll get a legal opinion for you.
Mhm.
Okay.
I know that in the charter, you can tighten stuff up and make stuff tighter than state laws if you want to, so this,
Okay.
Do we move
But I'm
on?
not a lawyer, so get a legal opinion.
Section H, levy of assessments and enforcement of liens on real property. The city may levy and collect assessments and file liens on real property to collect amounts owed to the city for garbage, trash collection, and sewer rental charges in reasonable amounts for the abatement of any nuisance, demolition, and removal of any legally condemned building or structure, and the cleaning and renovation of lots which are offensive to the sight or smell or hazardous to the public health. This is saying that the city can enforce liens on real property. Any questions? I, streets, alleys, and public grounds. The city shall have exclusive jurisdiction to control and regulate the use and enjoyment of its streets and alleys, public grounds, or ways. Which means, can you have,
I think stairs should be put in there. Ways is not specific enough. And there's just the recent example about stairs. Who has control of the stairs? And so, I mean, because they're such an integral part of Bisbee, I think I think the word stairs should be included in that.
It would just make it easier if somebody, if it comes up.
But the city is, yeah, right.
okay, and stairs, any other discussion on that?
Well, just stairs or ways.
Yeah.
Stairs, or ways.
Yeah. Want to go stairs and then ways?
That's 103Y.
May I just ask one thing? Ways would include, I know what you're saying and I'm with you, but stairs would include ways.
Yes.
So would it be a better solution to say public grounds or ways including stairs? What I'm worried about is I don't want somebody, if it comes to the vote of people, and them going, see, the stairs never were part of the city, they're now putting that in.
Oh, I see.
And so I'm wondering is if,
Or simply saying all other ways.
or ways including stairs.
Yeah, okay, that makes
Okay.
sense, that makes sense.
That does make sense.
Okay, including, the other thing I want to remind you is you've got to remember this is going to go before city council. And you have to temper this in the regulation. And as the mayor pointed out, they made many decisions and changes last year that did not pass. So you have to look in the context of what you're asking for. Stairs, I think, is a good one.
Do we vote on these changes?
Yes,
or not?
yeah,
Yes.
we do. We want to vote on this. So, Fred, you want to propose that?
Yeah. I move that we add ways including stairs to item 103,
Aye.
1.03I.
I'll second that.
City charter.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Good.
All those, now I gotta remember the names. All those opposed? Thank you. Okay, requirements for new development. Section J, the city may require all persons, firms, or corporations responsible for new physical development within the city to provide for or furnish or pay a fee in lieu of providing for or furnishing the following. 1, the public utility easements. 2, water production, storage, and transmission. 3, sewer collection, treatment, and disposal. 4, parkland and development. 5, school sites. 6, dedication and improvement of public rights of way. 7, bike paths and other necessary transportation. 8, drainage. 9, flood control. 10, other public facilities necessary to maintain satisfactory levels of service for said new development as provided by ordinance, which shall include definite standards basing the foregoing requirements on the needs of the inhabitants of said new development. This would be wonderful if we had some new development, huh?
But it's there.
But in case we do, yes.
So it's saying that they can pay a fee or provide one of these.
Yes. Any questions? Okay. Section 1.04, boundaries. The boundaries of this city shall be the boundaries as established at the time this charter takes effect, or such boundaries may be changed thereafter in the manner authorized by law. Any questions of it?
Yeah, boundaries, that would include, say, there's been some talk of trying to annex
Yes.
Naco.
Yes.
So something like that would apply.
That would be authorized by law.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, we could annex, and cities often do annex things. Okay, that's the first section there. Time-wise, we're at, what is it, 7:15?
Yeah.
Want to go another 15 minutes?
Sure.
And then give us the 90 minutes. Section 2, the council. And here we go, we can need it a little more.
You remember some of that?
I remember some of that. Section 2.01, all powers of the city. I know I had trouble with that. It's not in conflict.
Subliminal.
Freudian, I think.
Memory.
Freudian.
I'm starting to feel offended.
I would. I actually have good feelings about the city of Mississippi. I'm not one of those that are criticizing. Never was. And I got caught up in open meeting law.
Yes,
as
you did.
well know.
So did I.
So did you, yes.
It's something everybody gets.
All powers of the city should not in conflict with the Constitution of the state of Arizona and subject to the limitations of this charter shall be vested in the council, which shall enact appropriate legislation and do and perform any and all acts and things which may be necessary and proper to carry out these powers of or any of the provisions of this charter. Again, it's mouthful of language, but in essence, it's saying the council is the legislating body that shall enact all powers.
I don't have any suggestions, but it always annoys me when you say, and things. Yeah.
Could be anything.
Yeah, I know. Okay, no suggestions.
Nothing on that one. Okay, section 2.2. The council shall consist of a mayor and 6 council members elected 2 from each of the 3 wards. You agree there? Okay. 2.3, elections. The general election for the office of mayor and council members under the terms of this charter should be held every 2 years on each term of years. Arguments there? Term of mayor. The mayor should be elected for a term of 2 years.
Is this where we would put in term limits?
No.
It's right below its terms.
Yeah.
Good. We could change the term of the mayor.
That's right.
to
That's,
4 years.
we did, I believe we did put it in here, and then in the council, is that right, Sylvia? Yeah, and what that group had indicated was 2 terms, not to exceed 5 years. And it was said that way because a mayor could leave and the mayor pro tem come in, like the President of the United States situation, where they're limited to the 2 terms plus the term that they could take over from, that the vice president could take over.
Is that 2 terms to the mayor or 2 terms to the council?
Both.
Oh, so.
Well, no, I'm saying, that's what we did, was the council was a total of 10 years, 2 4-year terms, and a tail of the last person. And the mayor was 5, no more than 2 terms, not to exceed 5 years was the verbiage on that.
It's in his history of why was it being 2 years to the mayor and 4 to the council?
Tom will tell you.
Well, because if you got a bad mayor, you didn't have to have a recall, you got rid of him in 2 years, that's why. So that, the council was 4 years, you wanted to have a little bit of continuity when it came up to budget times and stuff like that. You want to have somebody that, you know, you didn't change everybody every time. And for the mayor, the 2 years is basically to keep, we had a few in the past, you know, when you get a mayor that nobody likes, it's either recall or you're stuck for 4 years. So we said, 2 years to the mayor. So that's why we didn't have term limits. You can get reelected as long as you can. But it doesn't always happen that way.
People think about putting term limits in.
We're talking about terms of mayor now.
We're talking about 204.
What would be the reason for it? I mean, it's not like they're making a bunch of money. I mean, it's, you know, or, I don't know, it just seems like we have a hard enough time, you know, finding people who really want to throw themselves into it anyway. It's true. I mean, you need term limits because there's big moneyed interest in keeping people in power to do manipulations. I just don't see that kind of situation here, right? I mean,
Term limits also, if, as Tom said, if the mayor is to begin to not meet the qualifications or the support of the city as necessary, then you don't want to go through the rigmarole of the recall, et cetera, that creates division within the community. So there could be underlying reasons. We're not just talking about the current mayor. We're also talking about what could happen in the future. So the provisions aren't put in here for a person specific. They're put in to protect the city overall and how it's governed.
So do you think that the term limits, as opposed to what Tom said about the 2 year term for mayor, that seems like a good way to deal with that issue that you brought up. But term limits in terms of how many terms they can be voted back in.
Those are consecutive terms.
Right,
So now we're talking term limits into that
About the
section.
mayor.
That's what
It's only 2.04 right now.
Yeah, 2-year term. We can discuss, do we want it to remain? We heard what Tom said, which makes some sense. You get a bad mayor every 2 years, you get rid of them. Is there any downside to having a mayoral election every 2 years? Is it causing turmoil for the city to have to do this? Are we fighting about who's the mayor going to be every 2 years and we don't need
Well,
to?
you're gonna have the election every 2 years anyway, because the way you have the council split. So you have it every 2 years, you have half the council up, so.
So there is an election every 2 years. But should we have a mayoral election every 2 years? Is there an argument we'd be better off not having this big debate about who's going to be our mayor every 2 years?
People that are mayors probably don't like it because you gotta run every 2 years, but
It's not as big a deal as it is
No, it's not.
nationally to run for office.
And just to add on to what you're saying, what is the cost to that? Like, what is the cost for the city to have a mayoral election?
You're going to have the election anyway.
yeah.
So it's nothing, it adds nothing to the process.
It's extra couple $100 to print that extra
Okay.
stuff.
I brought it up for term limits because I wanted to do what other people say. I'm not particularly for them or against them. I'm very agnostic about it.
And nobody's asking for a longer
No.
term for the mayor than 2 years?
No.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, we move on.
Yes.
2.05, terms of council members. Every 2 years, 3 council members, 1 from each ward, shall be elected for 4-year terms. These shall be the ones receiving the greatest number of votes. Until that time, each incumbent council member shall retain his or her office as provided by law.
His or her, according to the LGBTQ group, is not gender neutral.
What about they?
What
Is
is?
that safe?
Well, yeah,
I think they is a safe.
Or there,
well,
They-
yeah,
they're-
retain
grammatically
their,
it's not.
Their office is provided by law.
The dictionary says it is now. That was just in the news, if you go by the dictionary. They,
That's the safe thing.
they is now an acceptable singular.
So we
Okay.
have to say retain their
All the revisions
office.
came after.
That would be
If
okay.
you want to do it the way it has to be stated.
Would retain their office.
Until that time, the incumbent council member shall retain
THEIR, their.
Yes.
Yeah, the suggestions
Well,
change.
I'm only
So
just-
thank you, Joe, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I started to misspell it.
I'm getting to just practice my profession.
Well, we're glad to have you.
You get the number.
Okay, that's number 2.05, and we would like to change, it shall retain their office as provided by law.
Right. Okay, I move that we change his or her to their.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
I'm sorry, there were too many people that said second. Who said,
That's a second.
you did?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Yeas have it. Moving on to section 2.06. Laws. It should be the responsibility of the council to ensure that all federal and state laws are adhered to in the composition of wards. I think that refers to the population breakdown, doesn't it? I'm not sure exactly what that means.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
After the census, which comes up in 2020, then they'll do, you'll see, you might have to change some of your boundaries depending, you have to have an equal amount of people in each boundary.
Yeah, that's what
They always change.
So they might change a little bit.
And it's like
Saginaw,
and
Galena,
Upper and Lower Galena.
Bakerville, it depends on how they have to slice it.
Well, I had a question about that, because there was some talk of a large development happening in San Jose. I think it's since been forgotten about. It was going to be 1,500 people or something like that.
Wilson Road.
So, I mean, something like that would really kind of break this system. If 1,500 people all of a sudden.
Well, we'd have to readjust the districts. What
And the
we'd have to
council would
do,
just have
you
to
would,
readjust
instead of
it.
having it all in San Jose, you'd have the dividing line out there farther probably, because there'd be more people in that area. So you would shuffle, you might be in Ward 2 and then all of a sudden in Ward 3, or you might be in Ward 3 and all of a sudden you're in Ward 2.
Well, I understand
And those have
that.
changed in the past.
But there's because they're such different nature to the major neighborhoods that we have, Old Bisbee being what it is, Warren being what it is, and San Jose, they all have their own kind of character and needs. And so that if there was all of a sudden Old Bisbee people, getting to, that those boundaries were pushed out into San Jose because of a big redistricting like that, then San Jose, there would be this imbalance of power. There'd be more people in San Jose, controlling who gets voted into, for the different wards.
That's why we don't like gerrymandering. That's basically what that is, but
The law.
I don't know how you split the census. After the census, they'll tell you exactly. They're going to tell you how to cut it up. They'll go through streets. You might be this side of the streets in Ward 1 and this side of the streets in Ward 2. That happens.
And who does that redistricting?
City staff. I
Well,
forget
it's
who
just
works
the
on it. It
council.
happens every 10 years after the census.
I got you.
The council determines the boundaries based on the information from the census.
Because, I was.
Staff does it.
Staff.
The council votes
It's
on
a
it.
big deal. It takes a long time. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because.
This is just the structure.
And then you have to have it approved by the government. They have to approve.
Yeah, the state law has to.
State, yeah, they have to look through and sign off on it that you did it correctly.
They're called boundary commissions.
Yes. Okay, let's go on, because there's things that come up here, what you're talking about. The council should determine the boundaries of the wards to be approximately as follows. Ward 1 shall include a substantial portion of Old Bisbee and such other areas as may be necessary to result in similar populations for each ward and to comply with applicable law. Sorry, I'm in trouble speaking tonight. 2, Ward 2 shall include a substantial portion of Warren and such other areas as may necessary to result in similar populations for each ward and to comply with applicable law. And Ward 3 shall include a substantial portion of San Jose and such other areas that would be necessary to result in similar populations for each ward and comply with applicable law. So there's your answer right there, Sandy. It's, and it is based on population.
It's quite conceivable, depending on how trends go, that with the number of absentee ownership in Old Bisbee, that the boundaries of Old Bisbee might have to be pushed out to equalize the number of people that are in Warren and San Jose.
And that's happened already.
Yeah.
Saginaw and Galena do have moved in and out
They've
since I've
moved
been
in and out,
involved in
yeah.
politics.
That's right.
But that C is answering, I think, our questions here.
Okay, and that's it. The next one, boundary changes. C, these wards are to be changed in geographic boundaries by the council by ordinance at any time necessary to comply with state and federal law.
Okay. So just to be clear, the character of a particular neighborhood doesn't really come into
No.
account.
No.
It just has to be population numbers, just, okay.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's 7:30 almost. Shall we call this a quit here at section 2.7? We'll pick up. And we will be meeting next Wednesday, the 1st of November. And do we have a date on that? I don't have a calendar.
She'll have to get it to you.
Yeah, the first available Wednesday.
Okay, I
Yeah.
did not get a notice of this meeting on my email.
I can, somehow when we put your email address in, we forgot one of the M's in your name. I realized that and fixed it, and you.
I got it yesterday.
Yeah.
Somebody got the
So we do apologize for that.
I called because it said I didn't get
Okay, I'm going to be a real stick in the mud. I don't have email, so.